I'm Kennedy, an indie game designer, and this is a video about Souls games, so just to get this out of the way, here are my credentials. Does playing 2,300 hours of Souls-likes make me in any way more qualified to talk about this topic than anyone else? No. Did I play more Dark Souls 2 than Elden Ring? Yes. Are all of these hours on mouse and keyboard? Also yes. So now that everyone fully understands that I cannot be trusted, let's get to the essay. Spears are a staple of every hack and slash and Souls-like on the market. They give the player a safer option, one with low damage, dangerous speed, and terrible accuracy, all in pursuit of range. And holy shit, is that a bad trade? I mean, these things plainly suck, and today we're going to talk about what's gone wrong. But Kennedy, you say, bows are in a worse spot than spears. Why should I care about spears specifically when so many other weapons are also unbalanced? Bows are pretty bad in Elden Ring in two ways. One, they don't do damage, and two, they're boring. They invalidate encounter design and turn the game into a terrible version of an FPS because so few enemies have an answer to range damage. So why isn't my video about that? Because when you put a bow in an FPS, they're fun as hell. Bows get their spot in the sun. The fantasy is satisfied somewhere in this big beautiful world. Not so for spears. When a game is picking what weapons to add to their team, spears tend to get picked after swords, bows, hammers, and daggers, only slightly before the nonsense fantasy weapons like whips, scythes, and two swords at the same time. I want to be clear about something. I like swords. You don't get to be as queer as me without owning a few swords, but they're a weapon for the nobility. This is the thing medieval Jeff Bezos wears while he's asking you why you took 2 bathroom breaks today. Spears shouldn't be getting picked last. They're the working class weapon, a weapon for the people, an invention that's gone mostly unchanged since prehistoric times because they're already perfect. The spear is the tool for the job when you want your enemy to just stay 5 feet away, and somehow that fantasy never gets brought to life. Let's compare some of the mainstay weapons and see where spears go wrong. The longsword is medium range, medium speed, medium everything. It's what the game is balanced around. It's vanilla, and people get mad at things for being vanilla, but that's only because it's the best flavor and they're jealous. The dagger doesn't do crazy damage or poise break and has awful range, but it's fast. It lets you play aggressive, sneaking damage into gaps between enemy attacks in a way that no other weapon can. The refrigerator with a handle, I mean great hammer, class of weapons are for crushing a whole dude in one big swing. It's aggressive in the opposite way a dagger is. You're frequently trading hits, using the massive damage and poise break to survive the aftermath. And most weapons kind of fit along this spectrum, from dagger to longsword to colossal weapon, exchanging damage and poise break and range for speed, with a few other features and gimmicks in the mix. But then we come to the spear. A spear is the longest range melee weapon, and its speed, damage, and poise break all suffer for that fact, but hey, it lets you fight an enemy from all the way over here. In a perfect world, picking up a spear should feel like wearing a comfy sweater. You should feel safer. You're like a little porcupine. Anything that tries to attack you gets pushed away with a warning poke. As long as you don't get surrounded or let them get past your guard, you're gonna be fine. And in Dark Souls 1, that was by and large okay. Enemies bumbled slowly towards you, so the range difference mattered, and armor was strong, so getting hit mattered less, because Dark Souls 1 was an easy game for babies. But over time, enemies got faster, while the balance of the spear stayed the same. A small advantage in range that might have offered you a quarter of a second in Dark Souls 1 now offers a quarter of a frame. Range matters less and less, while speed and poise break, the things a spear sacrifices, hold their value. The dagger's attacks are so fast you can usually do both an attack and a dodge. The hammer's stance break can interrupt the enemy's attack and negate their damage. While the safe option, the spear, gets neither of these advantages. You need bigger openings than either of those weapons, deal less damage, and on top of that you're more likely to miss because it's a narrow stab and enemy attacks go like this. The result is that almost universally, spears feel awful. I'm sure there are builds where you spam a certain Ash of War, or dual wield, or constantly block and counterattack, but regardless, the core function of the weapon, the promise inherent to a spear, isn't being fulfilled. This is what a spear should do. This is what a defensive weapon should look like. This is the feeling of being a porcupine. So how do we make that a feeling that doesn't require stacking poise and bullying a weak enemy? How do we make that a facet of the spear all the time? You could just move some numbers around. If spears are meant to be safe and low damage, lean into that by giving them a small speed and poise advantage over the longsword, instead of being worse at both. This might horribly mess up PvP, and it doesn't really give us the porcupiney feeling of a spear, but somehow I'm pretty sure this is the best we could hope for. If range is really all that matters, you could do to spears what you do to great swords and great hammers, and just make spears comically oversized, like truly 20 feet long. This will make people like me mad, but I'm already mad because a bastard sword and a longsword are the same thing, and I've had to spend this whole
I'm
video
just gonna
calling
put this
short
rant
swords
in quarantine
longswords
with the
because
rest
if
of
I
them.
don't, I'll be trapped in a wild
A
tangent
rapier
forever, and
requires
nobody
far
wants
more
that.
strength to
Two-handers
fight with
were
than a
helped like
two-handed weapon.
spears. The crossguard at the top
Double-bearded
is for
axes
that
are so you
second
have to
handle.
sharpen them half as often. There's no combat
All of my
advantage to
opinions
them.
are from YouTube videos I watched 10 years ago and might be wrong, but I'm still gonna
Yeah,
say
this
them
is why I
anyways.
can't talk about realism. Where were we? Right. I feel like the best way to capture a porcupiney feeling, to stop an enemy in its tracks, is to give spear counterattacks either a huge poise damage buff or something like the mini parries you can do to bosses. The only way to satisfy the fantasy of a spear is to be able to use it to fend off virtually any attack with the right timing. The only issue with that is if you can fend off every attack, well, you kind of invalidate a lot of enemy design. Honestly, this will always be the problem with the spear. It'll either be so defensive as to invalidate a lot of threats, so weak as to be a trap weapon, or forced into a gimmick which might be fun but isn't really spear-like. If you're taking notes to make your own hack and slash, honestly, I recommend you just don't have them. It sucks, they're iconic, you need one to complete a bad cosplay of Ornstein, but maybe they just don't fit. Unless. Spears invalidate conventional hack and slash design. What if you didn't remove them? What if you designed for them? A whole game for spears, where a spear is a physical obstacle that can force enemies back, and since we're spitballing, what if we expand on that? The spear skewers targets. It gets stuck in them, letting you swing them around. It's a game where if you're threatened, you have to abandon your weapon. If you're being aggressive, you can stick it in deeper. You can kick enemies around, take them apart. And also you play as a cute little porcupine named Quillery who's looking for her mom and is friends with a spider. Or, something like that. Okay, I'm already making it. It's called Spine and Quill. It's on Kickstarter right now, or if you can't support it financially, it's also on Steam, and every wishlist there helps. I've already put about 18 months into the project, completely solo, and it's finally starting to shape up into a seriously fun, open-ended, unique hack and slash game that I can't wait to release into the world. With a few more layers of polish. And some levels. Maybe a soundtrack. There's work to be done, but the finish line is in sight, and I'd love if you could help me to take it over the line.